Hello and welcome back to the channel. So this week's video is part of the knife throwing for dummies series or playlist, and within that I would like to talk about the question or idea: should beginners start with bow shuriken, start throwing or learning with bow shuriken, sometimes referred to as throwing spikes? Okay, now the short answer, if you don't want to watch the whole video, is yes, you should. But, and this is what we're going to talk about in the video, there's a few things you would probably should consider before you're going down that route. Okay, right off the gate, right out of the bed, you need to ask yourself the question of why do you think, or why would you like to do that? Why do you think it's a good idea for you? Now, I prepared two possible scenarios, okay? And then we're going to look at those. Okay, so the first, or I don't know if the first, but one side or one scenario is because you enjoy the fact that was, or both shurikens were, a practical throwing weapon, okay, or implement, okay? It's part of the samurai slash ninja heritage, and you enjoy the idea of belonging to that particular, and I'm going to air quote, subculture within the knife throwing community. You would like to be among those guys who painstakingly research it, practice the traditional methods, and make historically correct throwing spikes or historically correct bow shurikens. Okay, now these guys put a lot of effort into recreating the finer details. Okay, so it's they're not just like me who just make a couple of spikes and throw it. These guys are the real deal. Okay, and this is such a big topic. I only scratched the surface of it, but it is very interesting and it's intriguing. It is awesome. Okay, now if you're going to go down that route, my suggestion is do not try to make these bow shurikens at home, but buy it from a reputable maker. There are plenty on, if you go through into the knife throwing groups, or maybe no, I shouldn't say plenty. There are a few people who actually makes good ones, the correct ones. And you also shouldn't learn how to throw from me. You should learn from the guys who actually practice Shuriken Jitsu, which is the art of throwing shurikens. Okay, and yes, to my understanding, there's a few different schools. And yeah, it's a beautifully complex topic, and yes, I admire the guys who actually do this because they're preserving something for the future generations. Okay, you cannot ask anything more. It's beautiful. Okay, simple. Now, the other side is you wanna start throwing with spikes because, let's face it, it's cost effective. Okay, well, actually, if you wanna be, it can be actually really cheap. Okay, now what you need is a little bit of shop knowledge, and a couple of more basic power tools like an angle grinder or a bench grinder or a bed sander, and you can make your own because there's not much to it. Okay, and you can learn to throw them exactly the same way as you learn to throw a throwing knife. I'm talking about no spin here mostly, but so is instinctive half spin. Exactly the same. Now, that's exactly what I do as well, okay? I made a lot of spikes, made lots of prototypes, figuring out what I like, what I don't like. It's a great side project within the hobby. Keep figuring out newer raw materials that I don't have to heat treat, but it will withstand the hard life of a throwing object or implement. Now, even if you don't have this ability, you can actually buy what I call custom made, which is basically made by a throwing knife maker. So quality, you can buy quality, not the Chinese throwaway Amazon specials, but I'm talking about made by people who actually care about what they do and make them properly. So you can buy sets, and you still have a smaller investment than if you have bought throwing knives. Okay, both shurikens are cheaper, less material, less work involved. Okay, so that's that way. It's kind of budget friendly, even if you buy them from makers. But of course, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Okay, there's always a trade-off. Now, bow shurikens, yes, you can, like, I'm not special. I throw them the same way as I throw my knives, and I'm not alone in this. So there's plenty of other people who throw bow shurikens as well as throwing knives the same way. Okay. Now, the challenge with them is they are lighter. They are smaller in diameter or physical appearance, as in round or square. So they sometimes harder to grip, harder to learn the grip, maybe, for some people. But they are definitely lighter. Therefore, you need to get your technique more... what's the better word? Well, actually, you have to have your technique better, or you have less room for error. Okay, now, which is interestingly enough, because a few very established knife throwers actually recommend to have a set of throwing spikes among your throwers, because they are refining your throwing method or body mechanics, because they are slightly difficult or more difficult to throw than a knife. Okay, so that's it. Horses for courses. They're cheaper, but can be a little bit more difficult to learn with. And with that, maybe the improvement of distance or stick rate may be a little bit slower with them than with a knife, because the weight of the throwing knife will do half of your work. Okay, but that's enough on that side. Now let's have a look at some dimensions. My recommendation to a learner is, well, this is, you have to play with square or round. I personally prefer square, but lately I have made a few, more than a few, round ones, and I start to like them. Okay, especially with the homemade knurling on the handle part. So square or round, yeah. Now, my personal preference or recommendation to a new thrower, start at 9 inches, which is about 230 millimeters. Both of these are 9 inches long, and either a 10 millimeter by 10 millimeter square or a 10 millimeter round. Now, 10 millimeter is about 3/8 of an inch. Okay, if you're that word. Now that will give you on the square, they're about 140-ish gram, maybe a bit less, maybe more, can't remember. On the round, just under 120 grams. Okay, so, but these are really, I prefer them. I like to play with them as when I'm learning new distances, new ideas. I think they're the best for learning. Okay, now some people say go longer. Yes, I do have. So this is an 9-inch long, 9. This is a 10-inch long, 10 millimeter by 10 millimeter square. I don't like it. I think it's difficult to control. But then again, that's just my personal preference. Now, if you go, well, I should say I have made, again, longer ones. So these are slightly over 10-inch long. I think they're 260 millimeter long, 240 gram, 12 millimeter by 12 millimeter square. They hit like, I don't know, whatever hits really hard. Okay, and they make a big hole. They actually, these ones, these heavy, they actually split some of my blocks. I mean, they just really awesome. But I wouldn't recommend it for learning. I find it difficult to learn with. On the other hand, my origin, or one of my earlier favorites, these are 8 millimeter by 8 millimeter and slightly over 200 millimeter long, around 8 inches. And so this gives you a 90 gram. Now also, I made a few. These are just over 200 millimeter long, 10 millimeter round. That gives you just over 100 grams, just like 2 grams over. So as you can see, the theme here is between 200 and 230 millimeter length, and either an 8 millimeter square, or a 10 millimeter square or 10 millimeter round. Now, because I know you're going to ask, I do have an 8 millimeter round like this one. This one's 190 millimeter. I find it too light. Okay, they're about 68, just under 70 gram, but I find it too light. And for learning no spin and knife throwing technique or method or body mechanics, I think those are way too light, especially because I use wooden target. Now again, I'm not unique in this. Many throwers use a wooden target with their throwing spikes, but those 70 grams one are a bit too light for me. Now I have seen throwers who I admire throw those with no problem. So that's why I made a few, but I'm not a great friend with those ones yet. Okay, so this is a 230, so 9-inch long, and if you have a look, it's exactly the same motion, just like throwing a knife. Just for visual, sorry, not visual, hearing effect. So this is the big boy. It's just thunks. It has some massive hitting power. I like them, but I wouldn't recommend it as a learning implement. But anyway, so hope this kind of shed some light in the mysteries of bow shuriken, or as bow shuriken as a learning implement. But anyway, thanks for listening. Hope it helps somebody. and I shall see you in the next video. Thank you.